Hey guys, I'm sorry I can't be there today. Not feeling well, but I will return tomorrow. So I just expect you to do your best today, and we will cover any questions that you have in class tomorrow. So make sure that you have all your supplies for today. You do not need a dry erase marker, so you can ignore that piece. But just make sure you have your assignment from the desks. Your homework tonight is just to finish completing your test corrections um, that you haven't, if you haven't completed those yet. Okay, so let's start by looking at one of the questions from your test. So if you'll make sure that you have that out. And substitute teacher, if you don't mind pausing as they have the opportunity to get that out on their desk. So this was one that was commonly missed, and actually that I ended up throwing off of our test. So let's look at why we missed it and what we can do in the future to figure that out. So the first 5 terms in a pattern are shown below. If the pattern continue, which expression can be used to find the nth term? This means any term. So I'm looking at for a rule that could be used to find that. So I have a hard time remembering all of those formulas for sequences, but I do understand rules, and I understand that this means when I have a coefficient, it means that I need to multiply. And I know that this is significant, as in this is the extra piece I need to add or subtract on to get what my actual answer is. So we should remember enough from sequences that this is my first term, second term, third term, fourth term, and fifth term. And I could rewrite that as a table. Okay, so after I rewrite that as a table, it looks a little different to me. So this looks to me just like slope-intercept form, really. So I know what I multiply by is always my rate of change. Lots of us made the mistake of thinking that that was my first term. But I'm not going to add negative 0.5. I'm not going to do negative 0.5 times 2 plus 0.25 to get to my second term. That would be negative 1 plus 0.25, which would be negative 0.75. Well, that doesn't get me to my second term. So that doesn't work. And that's not the thing I'm adding each time. So it's not going to be the thing I multiply by, because it's not my rate of change. What I'm adding each time is 0.25. So I'm adding 0.25 for each one. So my rate of change is 0.25. So I have to have H as my answer just purely from that. It's not going down, so it couldn't be a negative 0.25. And we already know it's not 0.75. But let's look at why we have the minus 0.75. So where did that come from? Now, I told you guys, and we pushed this through class. Now, if I were to write this as a sequence rule, there's 2 ways I could do it. I could do 0.25 times n minus 1, meaning I'm taking away that first term, and I could add, or I could subtract my first term. Or I can write it in slope-intercept form. Instead of taking away 1 right here from my n, I would just have this like an h. And then I'm looking for my 0 term instead of my first term. My y-intercept would go here. So my 0 term, if I back up my table, and I'm working backwards. So this would be negative 0.75. And that's where that comes from. So this is my zero term. But it's still a rule that could be used in my pattern, even though it's not written in the recursive sense. It is written in my slope-intercept. Okay, so now that you've got that corrected, we're going to go to our assignment for today. So if you can find this is going to need to go into your notebook when you're finished. But today, our goal is to make connections between all of our different forms. So to make connections between all of our different forms, we are going to look at how each form can actually convert into each other, and you're going to practice that today. So we are going to write the equation of the line in each form, starting with point-slope form. So to write in point-slope form, from my formula chart, I would go look at that because I have a hard time remembering it. But it's y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So I was with some students in tutoring yesterday. And the reason why we have this point-slope form is that it's actually made out of my slope formula, y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. And if I solve or I move around and I start to solve for y, I can actually rearrange my formula. It has all the pieces, y minus y, x minus x, to my point-slope form. So just like this is a linear equation, this is also a linear equation. But maybe that will also help you remember why we're subtracting in point-slope form, because it's actually coming from my slope formula, which is the change in y to change in x, which means I have to subtract to find that change. Okay, so that's where we need to start because we actually do have to find our slope. So I'm going to do my y2 minus y1. So I'm going to write down 2 points. I'm going to use negative 1.5 and negative 9. And 3.5 and 1. Okay, so y2 minus y1, I'm going to do 1 minus negative 9. And then 3.5 minus negative 1.5. So I will definitely use my calculator for this to make sure I don't make any silly mistakes. But this on top would be 10, and on the bottom would be 5. 10 over 5 equals 2. So my slope is 2. So I don't know anything else except that slope, and I know a point. So I can go ahead, that means, and write it in point-slope form. So I need 2 here, and then I can use any point, but I'm going to use this positive point because that's the easiest for me to deal with. So I will have 2 times x minus 3.5. And I'll have y minus 1. And that's my point-slope form. And from there, I can go to my slope-intercept form. So my slope-intercept form is in y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to start to convert this to look like this. So I need a coefficient to x for my slope, and I need one constant. So I can see I have some work to do. So I'm going to start by distributing, just like I would if I was solving equations. So now I'll have y minus 1 on the left still, and I'll have 2x minus 7 on the right. So I need to get y by itself, so I need to remove this negative 1. So to remove a subtraction, I'm going to do addition. So this eliminates the 1 on the left. I have y equals 2x and a negative 7 and a positive 1. Combining those together would become a negative 6. So my slope-intercept form is y equals 2x minus 6. And last is my standard form. My standard form is ax plus by equals c. And a, b, and c can be any rational number, but not 0. So to convert y equals 2x minus 6 into standard form, I need to move, I already have my y over here, but I need to move my x. But I was thinking about this yesterday, and I was thinking that we were doing a lot of work of multiplying by negative 1, and I started thinking about how we wouldn't have to multiply by negative 1, because that's a little confusing. So instead, I thought, what if we moved our 6, or negative 6, by adding 6 to both sides? So now I have y plus 6 equals 2x. And then I can subtract my y from both sides. So I have 6 equals 2x minus y. So this is standard form. I really should rewrite it. So I'm going to. And it will be 2x minus y equals 6. And that way we didn't have to multiply by that negative at the end, so that our a term is not negative. Okay, so here's a question. How can we verify that these are the same? Well, one way is to plug in your x and y value to each of those. So I could go back and I could plug in 3.5 and negative 1.5 and make sure that I get the right values, or right output, okay, that the statements are true. But also we can use our graphing calculator. So I could go graph, the easiest one to graph in your graphing calculator is 2x minus 6. But I think that tomorrow I'll just show you how to do the other ones. So if somebody will remind me tomorrow, we will go and type in our other ones to make sure that we are bringing up the right graphs on our graphing calculators to check to make sure our answers are correct. Okay, so for the rest of class, you are going to work together in a group on 4 puzzles. The 4 puzzles need to be matched together with your work shown. So make sure that you have that shown. Okay, so your goal is to fit them together like you see here on the board. So you could start with any form that you choose, but using our notes that we just completed as an example will work for you. So the line has a slope of 3 and a y-intercept of negative 4. Well, that would match with this, my slope-intercept. And then by converting my point slope and my standard form to slope-intercept by solving for y, I should see how those go together. So for instance, 3x minus y equals 4. would become negative y equals negative 3x plus 4. And then I'd divide both sides or multiply both sides by negative 1 because of that negative. So it would become y equals 3x minus 4. Over here, just like we did in our example, I would distribute. So 3x, and that would be a 0, so I don't even need to write that. Y plus 4 on the left, I'd subtract 4 on both sides. And I'd have y equals 3x minus 4. So I can see all those go together. Please don't write on your puzzle pieces. Please write on a separate piece of paper. But I do expect you as a table to complete all 4 of those with your work shown today in class. Your homework is the writing linear equations points cards. The cards are on the back, and the instructions are on the front. That is due Tuesday. So you have lots of time for this. It counts as a minor grade, so as a quiz grade. So make sure that it is accurate and that you receive help as needed.